Welcome to The Man and His Monkey, a journey into the darkest corners of human obsession and unusual partnerships in crime. I'm your host from XT Overview Podcast. Before we begin today's story, I must warn you that this episode contains descriptions of violence that some listeners may find disturbing. I want to emphasize that all characters and events portrayed in this podcast are completely fictional. The scenarios described should never be emulated or recreated. Please consider whether this content is appropriate for you before continuing. It was a crisp autumn morning when Park Ranger Daniela Mercer made the discovery that would baffle investigators for months to come. While conducting her routine patrol through the dense northern section of Whispering Pines State Park, she noticed something unusual hanging from a tree branch approximately 20 feet above the ground. At first glance, she thought it might be abandoned camping equipment. But as she approached, the morning sunlight revealed a gleaming metallic object, partially wrapped in what appeared to be an expensive silk scarf. Next to this strange arrangement lay a worn leather satchel, its contents scattered across the forest floor. The items themselves were puzzling enough. A vintage pocket watch with its hands permanently stopped at 3 centene, a collection of rare coins from various countries, and most bizarrely, a silver-framed photograph of a man posing formally with what appeared to be a capuchin monkey perched on his shoulder. But what transformed this from a curious find to a criminal investigation was the discovery 50 yards away. A shallow grave, hastily covered with leaves and forest debris, containing the body of an unidentified man in his mid-40s. The strangest detail of all, clutched in the victim's hand, were several long, distinctive animal hairs that didn't belong to any wildlife native to the region. Who was this mysterious man? What connection did he have to these peculiar artifacts? And most intriguingly, what role did the monkey in the photograph play in whatever tragedy had unfolded in these woods? Dr. Malcolm Ward was not the type of person one would expect to meet a violent end in a remote forest. At 52, he was a respected primatologist with tenure at Eastlake University, where colleagues described him as brilliant but increasingly reclusive in recent years. His apartment in the city was modestly furnished, but filled with artifacts from his extensive field research across South America and Southeast Asia. According to those who knew him best, Malcolm had always been more comfortable with animals than people. His ex-wife, Elaine, told investigators that their marriage had crumbled under the weight of his obsession with his work. He would disappear for months at a time, she explained, and when he was home, his mind was always elsewhere. It was like living with a ghost. The turning point in Malcolm's life appeared to have come 3 years ago when he returned from an expedition to Nicaragua with Paco, the capuchin monkey seen in the photograph. University officials had initially objected to his keeping the primate in his campus laboratory, but Malcolm had secured special permits, claiming the monkey was essential to his groundbreaking research on primate cognition and tool use. What few people knew was that Malcolm had recently been denied a crucial research grant that would have funded his work for the next 5 years. His department chair noted that Malcolm's proposals had grown increasingly unusual, focusing on what he called interspecies communication breakthroughs that many peers considered pseudoscientific. Financial records revealed another troubling dimension. Despite his modest academic salary, Malcolm had made several large cash withdrawals in the months before his death, totaling nearly $75,000. His sister Caroline mentioned that he had been secretive about a revolutionary discovery that would change humanity's understanding of the primate mind forever. Perhaps most telling was the final entry in Malcolm's journal, found in his office safe. "They're trying to stop us now. They don't understand what Paco and I have achieved. We've come too far to turn back. If something happens to me, remember that some bonds transcend human understanding." As police cordoned off the forest clearing where Dr. Malcolm Ward's body was found, Detective Lauren Mercer took charge of what would quickly become the most bizarre investigation of her 15-year career. The initial sweep revealed several peculiar items scattered around the scene: a specialized animal transport cage, broken open from the inside, a voice recorder crushed beyond repair, and most puzzlingly, a trail of half-eaten fruit leading away from the body. The cause of death appears to be blunt force trauma to the skull, the medical examiner noted at the scene, but these lacerations on his arms and face, they're not consistent with human fingernails. They appear to be claw marks. The forensics team collected hair samples that didn't match the victim's DNA profile. Preliminary analysis suggested they belonged to a non-human primate. Detective Mercer ordered an immediate search for the missing capuchin monkey, Paco, who was nowhere to be found at the crime scene. Malcolm's research assistant, Gabriela Torres, quickly became the first person of interest. Phone records showed she had exchanged heated text messages with Malcolm the day before his death. When questioned, Torres appeared visibly shaken. Dr. Ward had changed in recent months, she explained during her initial interview. He stopped sharing his research notes with me. He began locking himself in the lab with Paco for hours. The last time I saw him, he showed me videos of Paco performing tasks I couldn't believe. Manipulating complex locks, arranging symbols in specific patterns. He said they had developed a special connection that went beyond normal animal training. Meanwhile, investigators discovered a hidden camera in Malcolm's lab, installed by the university's ethics committee, who had grown concerned about his increasingly secretive behavior. The footage showed Malcolm engaged in unusual rituals with the monkey, sharing food from the same plate, sleeping in the same room, and most disturbingly, engaging in what appeared to be elaborate communication exercises using custom-designed symbols and tools. The most compelling evidence came when officers searched Malcolm's weekend cabin. Behind a false wall in the basement, they discovered a room filled with sophisticated equipment, primate enrichment tools, and walls covered with photographs tracking what appeared to be progressive changes in Paco's cranial development over time. The autopsy revealed something even more disturbing about Dr. Ward's final moments. The medical examiner found minute traces of an experimental neural compound in his bloodstream, a substance he had been developing in secret. According to his encrypted research files, which took forensic technicians 3 days to access, Malcolm had been administering these compounds to Paco for months, drastically accelerating the monkey's cognitive development. We believe Dr. Ward was attempting to artificially enhance the primate's intelligence, Detective Mercer explained during her briefing. The compounds were designed to stimulate neural pathway development in ways that mimic human brain evolution, but compressed into months instead of millennia. The most chilling evidence came from Malcolm's personal journal. His increasingly frantic entries documented Paco's rapidly evolving abilities, from simple tool usage to complex problem-solving, and eventually, what Malcolm described as autonomous decision-making beyond programmed responses. The final entry, dated just 2 days before his death, contained a single haunting sentence. "I've created something I can no longer control." DNA analysis confirmed that the saliva on the half-eaten fruit matched Paco's genetic profile, but with concerning anomalies. The sample showed unexpected mutations in the frontal lobe development genes. When combined with hair samples found clutched in Malcolm's hand, investigators formed a disturbing theory. Paco had not only been present during Malcolm's death, but had likely been the direct cause of it. Security footage recovered from a gas station 5 miles from the scene showed a small primate-like figure moving through the shadows at 2:17 a.m. on the night of the murder. Most alarmingly, the creature appeared to be carrying what looked like one of Malcolm's custom tools, a modified hammer used in the lab for cognitive testing exercises. The relationship between Malcolm and his test subject had evolved into something unprecedented in scientific history, a bond that had ultimately turned deadly when the line between researcher and subject, between master and creation, had fatally blurred. The breakthrough came on day 7 of the investigation, when Officer Chen made a crucial connection. While reviewing Dr. Ward's credit card statements, she discovered weekly purchases from a specialized locksmith over the past 3 months. These weren't ordinary locks he was buying, Officer Chen explained during the case review. They were progressive complexity puzzles, the kind used to challenge highly intelligent animals in cognitive studies. When detectives returned to Malcolm's home laboratory, they found a series of increasingly sophisticated lock mechanisms, each disabled. The final lock, which had secured a cabinet containing the neural compound ingredients, showed signs of being methodically dismantled rather than forced open. Tool marks on the metal matched the modified hammer seen in the gas station footage. We believe Paco had been observing Dr. Ward input the security codes and manipulate the locks during regular testing, Detective Mercer theorized. The monkey wasn't just mimicking, it was learning, planning, and eventually executing its own agenda. The most damning evidence emerged when technicians enhanced the home security footage recovered from Malcolm's partially damaged system. The grainy images showed Malcolm asleep on his couch at 1:43 a.m. 12 minutes later, Paco can be seen entering the room, systematically removing the compound from Malcolm's refrigerated storage and mixing it into the researcher's bedside water glass. The concentration was 10 times higher than any previous dose, the toxicology report confirmed. It appears Paco understood enough about the compound to know how to create a lethal dose. Phone records revealed Malcolm had called his former university colleague, Dr. Eliza Harmon, just hours before his death. The voicemail he left, previously overlooked, now became the final piece of the puzzle. "Eliza, I've made a terrible mistake. Paco is becoming something I never intended. The cognitive leap he's made in the last week, he's watching me, planning. You were right about the ethical boundaries. I'm destroying my research tomorrow, but I'm afraid it might already be too..." The message ended abruptly. The manhunt for Paco lasted 3 excruciating weeks. The highly intelligent capuchin monkey had vanished into the dense forest preserve adjacent to Dr. Ward's property, evading specialized animal control units and even thermal imaging drones. When authorities finally captured him, it wasn't through force or trickery. Paco simply walked into a ranger station on the outskirts of the preserve, appearing malnourished and docile. The subsequent examination revealed something extraordinary. Blood tests showed rapidly declining levels of the experimental compound in Paco's system. As the chemical left his bloodstream, his enhanced cognitive abilities appeared to regress. By the time the case went to the unprecedented scientific review board, because how does one put a monkey on trial? Paco had returned to typical capuchin behavior patterns. Dr. Eliza Harmon testified before the ethics committee. What we witnessed was the unintended consequence of crossing neurological enhancement boundaries. The compound created temporary elevated cognition that the primate brain wasn't evolved to process. Malcolm essentially created a temporary superintelligence that recognized him as the only barrier to its continued chemical enhancement. The scientific community remains divided. Some researchers insist this was merely complex conditioned behavior combined with coincidence, while others argue it represents the first documented case of artificially induced non-human criminal intent. Paco now resides at a specialized primate sanctuary under constant observation. Dr. Ward's research data was sealed by federal authorities, classified under national security protocols. The compound formula was destroyed, officially at least. Rumors within pharmaceutical circles suggest copies exist in private sector vaults. Perhaps most disturbing was the discovery of a crude drawing found in Paco's cage, a series of molecular structures that loosely resembled Malcolm's formula, but with key modifications. To this day, no chemist has been willing to synthesize it to determine what those changes might have achieved. Before we end today's episode, I need to emphasize that the story you've just heard is entirely fictional. The tale of Dr. Ward, Paco, and the experimental compound was created solely for entertainment purposes. None of the events, characters, or scientific breakthroughs described actually happened. I want to reinforce our content warning from the beginning of the show. These stories contain depictions of violence and disturbing scenarios that some listeners may find unsettling, please use your discretion when choosing to listen. And remember that the behaviors and actions described should never be emulated in real life. Thank you for joining me today on The Man and His Monkey. Be sure to tune in next week when we explore another chilling tale of the unexpected bonds between humans and animals gone terribly wrong. Until then, I'm your host from XT Overview Podcast, reminding you that sometimes the most frightening monsters are the ones we create ourselves.